Hey folks, welcome to another Storytime with Max. Halloween, the title is updated, so try refreshing. Okay. It's been a little while since we had a Storytime. Let's see, tonight, and you can hear me, good. Tonight I am going to read The Becoming Silverhands, Part 4. The Tale of Nuada, Part 4. Part 4 is pretty good size, so I'll probably break this up into 2 readings. Can do half tonight and half next week, most likely. And if you need a little reminder, last time, Nuada. This always gets a little confusing for me because I think so hard about each part that it feels like I've already read it to you folks every time. But in part 3, at the end of part 3, our friend Nuada, having come through many adventures, scary and horrifying and disturbing as many of them were, finally met up with the merchant once again. And this merchant is in the depths and a little amazingly comfortable in the depths. Nuada demanded that he, the merchant honor his part of the bargain, and the merchant readily agreed, and told Nuada to wait while the merchant used this golden forge, this strange mystical forge in the depths, to make something for Nuada. And so Nuada agreed, and that's where we begin part 4. It was a strangely quiet time for Nuada, waiting for the being called the merchant to finish his work. It seemed to take days, but the passage of the sun had no meaning at all here in the endless darkness and the strange shadows of the depths. The evil place seemed almost dormant, sleepy, rather than focused on him. It wasn't long before Nuada set off to look around. He explored the area around the forge, then expanded his search to other empty passageways. He made sure to mark the walls with his initials as he went, to avoid getting lost in the shifting tunnels. Sometimes he found himself carving letters into stone, flesh, or other substances of which he knew nothing. If he had to, he left something on the ground as a reminder instead. Once, he lit a torch that was sitting in a wall sconce, and the torch came alive and attacked him. He easily cut it to pieces. It almost seemed as though the depths was holding back, waiting until the time was right to unleash its full horror. The thought chilled him. Nuada spent a long period of quiet darkness wandering through nearby passages. While he found a number of interesting baubles, he did not uncover what he was looking for: powerful or deadly artifacts. He did, however, manage to find a hidden passage that seemed to lead out. Carefully, ensuring it couldn't disappear on him at any point, He took careful note of its location in every form of sight he could. As his small supply of food ran out, Nuada followed his markings to return to the monstrous forge. However, the merchant was gone. In his place, there were several glittering objects laid out on the massive anvil. As Nuada approached, he also noticed several parchment notes, the nearest of which simply read, "For Nuada." The first item to catch his attention was a black chunk of obsidian, a sword, much like the one that Bress had carried. The note upon it read, "Wield me if you can." This weapon was larger than Bress's blade, and it radiated an aura that was surely tainted by this place. Unlike the cold aura of Bress's sword, this blade shone with a bright red glow. Nuada grasped the leather-wrapped pommel of the sword, but the weapon was too heavy to wield with his left arm. He could barely lift the blade from its resting place on the forge. Angry and frustrated, Nuada tried again and again to swing the sword. As his anger grew, he found he could lift it a little further, but still not enough to use it as a weapon. Dropping the sharp obsidian back down on the anvil with a resounding clang, he turned to the next treasure, a golden arm. The arm that the crafter had created was magnificent. Shapely and muscular, it was decorated with an intricate filigree and looked almost too good to be true. On the arm was a note that read, "Touch me if you dare." A little taken aback, Nuada brushed his fingers over the smooth gold elbow. Somewhat to his surprise, nothing happened. The Tuatha picked it up in his left hand. It was heavy, yet still lighter than he expected. However, still nothing happened. Hot-tempered as ever, Nuada felt his frustration and anger growing once more. What was he supposed to do with this? Was the merchant mocking him? As his anger increased, the arm twitched in his grasp. But that was hardly wondrous. These puzzles were too much. His frustration near the point of explosion, Nuada dropped the golden arm back in its place and turned to the final treasure, a plain, modest, wooden box. While not particularly interesting to look at on the outside, the box had its own aura. On the box was a note that read, "Eat me if you are man enough." Slowly, Nuada lifted the lid. Inside, he discovered a velvety, blood-red spider. It twitched its legs, ready to leap out. Revolted, Nuada slammed the lid of the box shut. He snatched it up and raised his arm, about to throw it into the hot coals of the forge. Then he hesitated. It's only a spider after all, he thought. Surely he had eaten worse on a dare as a youth. Then again, there was something strange about that spider. After all, he was in the depths. Perhaps this was more than a foolish prank. Could it be some sort of rite of passage? Many thoughts spun through his head as he stood there, left arm raised over the fires that crackled and muttered to themselves in the hot forge. He remembered the sacrifices of Nimue, of John, and the people of Tir na Nog. After a moment, he put the box back down on the ground and sat beside it, leaning against the warm metal of the great anvil. When he was ready, Nuada flipped the box open. Before it could react, he grabbed the crimson spider, shoved the struggling thing in his mouth, and swallowed. The Tuatha instantly regretted his choice. The creature was still alive, as it made its way down his throat, prickly legs kicking. With the spider in his stomach, Nuada felt his anger rise again. He had been tricked by the merchant, betrayed by his own people, while John and Nimue had been fools. Nuada was tired of them all. As the spider continued moving around in his stomach, apparently still alive, he felt a surge of something else. Power, perhaps? Yes, Nuada muttered. Power is the key to everything. I'll make that damned arm work. Take the sword, kill Bress, and make my people bleed to take me back. Once again, Nuada grasped the golden arm, rage and determination in his heart. This time, it responded to him. Of its own accord, the limb flew from his hand and attached itself to his stump. Tendrils of gold emerged and latched onto his shoulder. There was an uncomfortable wriggling sensation, not painful, but very strange. Nuada could feel his flesh merging with the arm, becoming one. He flexed his new golden fingers. The arm felt completely his own. Nuada reached for the obsidian sword and found he could heft it easily. He was as giddy as a child. The sword felt as light as a feather in his golden arm. As for the spider, it seemed to be resting easy inside. Nuada didn't feel it any longer. Thinking back to his exploration, the Tuatha ran to the hidden passage he had marked earlier. Flipping between his forms of sight, he called out to the depths themselves as he ran, laughing. Thank you for all your gifts. I will use them well. As he swung the sword triumphantly overhead, he could feel the life within it, calling out for more life, hissing its hunger for blood. When Nuada left the depths, the great empty caverns grew nearly silent. The only sound that echoed through the dark halls was the crooning laughter of the lone merchant. He tenderly caressed the new budded tendrils of the golden forge. Regrowing, they caressed him in turn. When he made his way out of the ley tunnel, Nuada found himself near the small settlement where the mercenaries had joined him. However, it was no longer the tiny hamlet it had once been. It had grown into a proper town, sprawling over the hillside. Many of the people there had no idea who he was, except as a vague legendary figure. It was a very different world from the one he had left. It seemed the passage of time had little meaning in that mysterious and deadly place. Nuada was perplexed, and felt sorrow staining his triumphant return. When he asked about the years he had been gone, he finally understood why the depths had been so quiet, why it had lulled him into a sense of security. A subtle trick had been played on him. Apparently, he had been gone over a century. Fully 100 years and more had passed since the day when he had led a troop of mercenaries into the Black Monolith. Yet, when he looked at his own reflection in the village well, he hadn't aged a day. That damn merchant didn't care to mention this. Nuada mumbled to himself as he trudged through the town. It seems I was wrong about magic and time. A friendly passerby told him to cheer up. Feel better, friend. The reign of Bress the Blessed is a joyous time, A golden age of the Tuatha Dé Danann. The man tipped his hat, about to continue on his way. Enraged, Nuada grabbed the little man by the throat and threw him against a nearby wall. The golden arm pinning him effortlessly, Nuada hissed, "What are you talking about? Rest the blessed? I should remove your offending head from your shoulders." Choking, the man raised trembling hands. "Easy, easy. I did not invent the name. Please, let me go." Nuada released his grip and did not spare the stumbling man a second look. Stalking off like a frustrated predator, Nuada repeated his oath to kill Bress in his mind. "And once that is done, I will return to the depths to teach that damned merchant that I am not to be trifled with. By all that lives, I will conquer the depths and use its power to lead my people to glory. Long indeed shall be the reign of Nuada the Mighty. After that, who knows? With the full power of the depths at my command, anything is possible." As the tall, powerful man with a golden arm left the settlement, mumbling to himself, the fearful folk closed the gate behind him. They hoped he would not come back. Bearing his new arm and his obsidian blade, Nuada traveled the land of the Tuatha Dé Danann, asking questions and trying to learn the truth of what had happened in his absence. Not everyone liked Bress as king. There was much talk of trouble between the three realms of this world. The unity that had been built over many generations was fraying at the edges. Nobody knew how the disharmony started, but as best as Nuada could discover, it had begun around the same time that he and the mercenaries had entered the depths. A cauldron of anger was slowly boiling in the realm under Bress's rule. Many felt ignored by King Bress, sitting safe in his capital city with no care for the people. They remembered the old King Nuada with fondness, even if they didn't remember his true glory very well. Wherever he found sympathetic ears, Nuada stirred up discontent among the people. Gradually, he gathered a small army made up of the disaffected malcontents, the dregs of Tuatha Dé Danann society. His troops were drawn from all the known races of his realm, but he forced them to work together, within the same rules of combat. He trained them hard, forging them into a weapon he could wield against Bress. Word spread quickly about Nuada's return, along with exaggerated tales of his army and the treasures he'd somehow earned in the depths. As the tales grew in the telling, others tried to follow his example, becoming delvers themselves. As far as Nuada heard, they emerged with nothing but madness. Rumors sprang up of his strong golden arm and unstoppable sword. Some said his gifts sucked out men's souls as one would suck the marrow out of a bone. Nuada encouraged the stories so that more people would flock to his banner. He even held public duels to show his power and help the rumors grow. As Nuada and his army reached Tir na Nog, the land itself seemed to recognize the coming storm. It grew quiet. The woodland creatures crept away to hide, and the wind dropped to dry gusts that barely brushed the trees. Though he saw the land suffering, Nuada forged onward, continuing his relentless march to the capital city of the Tuatha Dé Danann. It was a gloriously sunny day when Nuada and his army reached the object of his obsession. They stood before the sealed gates of his former city, just as the colors of the fall season were reaching their zenith. While his army made camp before the great golden gates, Nuada sat astride a newly acquired black puka, obsidian sword in his right hand, glinting gold in the sunlight. All around him, the trees showed off their deepest reds and brightest yellows, while bright leaves floated through the crisp morning air in a scene worthy of a fine artist's skill. Nuada could see the deadly archers of his realm on the battlements of the city, watching him, as hunters watch a wild animal. He felt a mixture of pity and the thrill of battle about to be joined. His sword seemed to pick up on these emotions, and it hummed in his hands with expectation. He raised it high above his head. "Come out, Bress. I challenge you once more, vile traitor. Meet me in single combat to decide the future of our people." With no response from the city, the sword's hum changed tone, and its aura flickered in annoyance. For days, the gates remained closed. Not even a messenger was sent from the city. The siege of Tir na Nog began in moody silence. Nuada became increasingly frustrated, with little to do but wait. Knowing how powerful the defensive enchantments from ages past could be, he did not wish to risk his army on an assault of the walls. However, the siege seemed to have very little effect on the city and its inhabitants. Months passed in waiting and uncertainty. The autumn leaves piled up on the tents of Nuada's army and upon the mighty walls of Tir na Nog. Though new warriors came to join his army's ranks day by day, the people within the city seemed to be carrying on their daily lives. Nuada could only watch from a distance as the festival of the winter court was held right on schedule. He ground his teeth at the sounds of revelry and merrymaking from within the city's walls. Though all of his scrying spells seemed to be blocked, Nuada was sure that his siege was failing. However, he never wavered in his determination. Sitting in his tent, a quick glance at either his new arm or his sword reminded him of his cause for rage. Even his own people cared not for him. "How can they treat me this way?" he asked himself, alone in the quiet of his tent. "I was their first king. I have fought so many battles and slain countless abominations to keep them safe. And now they swear allegiance to a man that is so unworthy. I will gather the courts and discover those that have betrayed me. They will pay, and pay again for what they have done. Why have none of my family sent me a message?" As winter's grasp tightened on the city and his army, there were no signs that either side's resolve would slacken. Through the winter, Nuada waited, and found himself still standing by the city when the snows melted, no closer to opening the gates. With the coming of spring, his anger bloomed with the buds on the trees. He began to look for someone to blame, punishing his soldiers for the smallest infractions. As morale within his army began to fray, there came the first sign of a break in the interminable stalemate. Someone from inside the city was captured upon leaving. It was a Hamadryad healer. When she was brought to Nuada's tent, he immediately recognized her as the one who had treated him so long ago. And that is where I'm going to stop for tonight. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. This is the next half of this of part 4 is easily one of my favorite parts of the story, the Silverhands becoming story. It's what the Hamadryad healer reveals to Nuada is just we'll just say that it's one of my favorite parts of the story. That's all. And anyway, sorry, Death Watch. I will read the second half of part 4 next week. So tune in for that. Foggy's been an amazing backer, has been putting up some of the lore videos on our wiki. So if you are want to find them in more easily identifiable locations, these videos, that is, instead of looking through the playlist on YouTube, which just has them all together in one, then check that out. Anyway, I will see you later, and I will remind you that we have some streams tomorrow. Let's see. Today's Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday. We're going to have an office stream in the morning, and AJ is going to stream in the afternoon, or at least that's the plan. More inventory, magical programming, coding work that he'll be doing. And those streams with AJ are always fun. So, yeah. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.